Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mark Kirsten. It is our pleasure to put on the webinar and have everyone participate. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time out of your busy schedule. We'll be going over some tips and hints and procedures for year-end closing for 2018 and helping you with the process so that you could do that quickly and effectively. Next slide, please. Before we jump right into the webinar, I wanted to tell you just a touch about SIS. We're very focused on Microsoft Dynamics SL, and within that we have been focused very seriously on project and service centric organization, and we have a very large customer base that we're supporting on Dynamics SL, and we've been around for quite a while, and hopefully we will continue to provide support to all of you, both the people who are attending who are current customers, and if we could be of assistance to anyone else who is not our current customer, we're happy to do so. Within the project and service organizations, as I said earlier, we focus very specifically on various flavors of construction, both general and specialty contractors. We have some clients in engineering and architecture. We focused and spend a lot of time working with oil and gas contractors, energy, and also professional services and government contractors. Next slide, please. Some of the services that we offer for some of the folks who are looking at changes and maybe not entirely happy with their current deployment of Dynamics SL. One of our offerings is current state assessment, where we'll take a look and see what your system is, what are the kind of the good things as well as the bad and limitation, and try to figure out how we make the system work better for you, and also recommend alternative approaches if that's something that is called for. We do business process analysis to help understand your current and desired business processes and help configure your solution to better mold itself around your business process to enable organizations to run their business your way. We focus within the Dynamics products, both Dynamics SL and Dynamics 365 for finance and operation. And we focus on software design, development, and deployment, where we build a number of extensions that are offered as products, as well as custom extensions that we have done for our clients. We focus on ERP and CRM solutions. As part of our implementations, we focus on going through your requirements, analyzing the products that we deliver, and building fit gap based solutions where we address shortcomings or limitations within the off-the-shelf product with either third-party solutions or custom development. We do custom development, as I mentioned earlier. We deliver solutions based on Microsoft standard implementation methodology that is built to deliver rapid deployment for native implementation, as well as hub and spoke rollout, where we may do implementation of Dynamics solutions into a number of subsidiaries, where we push data up to a corporate ERP solution, whatever that may be. And our solutions could be deployed either on-premise or in the cloud or in a hybrid environment. Next slide, please. We have, as I mentioned earlier, we have been a long-term Microsoft partner with a large track record. We have a dedicated support and customer care team that takes care of our clients post-implementation. We're very, very experienced in Dynamics products. As a matter of fact, the only ERP products that we represent are two Microsoft Dynamics products. And we have a significant amount of resources focused on Dynamics SL, Dynamics CRM, or as it's now called, customer engagement, as well as Dynamics 365 finance and operation. And a number of solutions are also include SharePoint components to them. Next slide, please. During the webinar, some kind of housekeeping items. If you have any issue or any technical difficulties, please email Debbie Peavy. You see her email on your screen right now. All the phone lines are muted, and we ask everyone to hold your questions until Q&A session. We will make sure that all your questions are addressed either during the webinar, or if the question is very, very intensive, we will take it offline, but rest assured that all your questions will get answered. For the best experience, it is always recommended to view the webinar in a full screen mode. And we are recording this webinar, and we will make the recording available to everyone who is attending. Next slide, please. At this point, I would like to turn this over to Melanie Brandeis from Plumbline Consulting, who will take it over from here. It is all yours, Melanie. Thank you.
Thank you. As Mark said, my name is Melanie, and today I will be covering with you the year-end processing in Microsoft Dynamics SL. We're going to discuss the steps for the year-end updates and getting those applied to your system. Also, some year-end processing tips, including payroll and W-2 processing, the project controller closing, accounts payable topics, including 1099 processing. Microsoft will be providing year-end updates in the following SL versions. These include SL 2018 CU1 and SL 2018, as well as SL 2015, 2015 CU1, and 2015 CU2. We'll begin with the application of the year-end updates that are provided by Microsoft. The first step is to download the updates via the Microsoft Customer Source or Partner Source website. The site does require that you have valid credentials to access the download. So if you do not have access, you may want to contact Microsoft directly or contact your partner to assist you with getting such access. Now, once you're on the website, you want to select the Dynamics SL as the product and then locate the year-end updates download. Typically, it is under the SL Service Packs area. You could also search on SL and year-end updates, and you can usually find it that way as well. Now, you want to install via the instructions that are included within the downloaded zip file. Make sure that you are following the instructions that are specific to your version of Dynamics SL, because sometimes the instructions may differ just slightly depending upon the version. In prior years, Microsoft has also released a YouTube video which would walk you through the installation step by step. So I'm not sure whether they will do that this year or not, but if you're looking to install those updates on your own and you just need a little extra guidance, you might want to go out and search YouTube for such a video once those year-end updates are made available by Microsoft. You do also want to make sure that all users exit Dynamics SL before you apply the update. And then also back up your SL system and application databases, as well as any custom reports that you may have within your SL installation. So that's typically your user reports folder. As far as the exact installation steps, I do not have those, unfortunately, at this time, since the year-end updates for 2018 have not yet been released by Microsoft. But basing it on the steps used to install these updates in prior years, typically, we want to make sure that we're installing at the server directly versus at a workstation. You would locate the directory for your version within the downloaded file and run the installation executable. This is going to copy some new screens and/or reports into the necessary folders within your SL installation. In the past, there has also been a SQL script provided as part of the installation steps. So you may also need to run that in SQL Server Management Studio to complete the application of the updates. Now, you might be wondering what all updates are included in these updates that we speak of. It's going to include any current year reports, any year-end resolutions or any changes that need to be done to make sure the processing reports are correct, any electronic file changes and or any AP 1099 changes, as well as any changes to the W-2s. Now, the information that I have received thus far for the 2018 year-end updates specifically indicates that that will include the following changes. One of them has to do with the W-2 form. Box 12 on there will include codes GG and HH. GG code is for income from qualified equity grants. HH is for aggregate deferrals. Also, box 9 on the form should not include a verification code that was there previously, as well as any red shading on any copies of the form. So there's been some modifications for that as well. The box should be blank, and then on the plain paper copy, the box name tag of verification code has been added. The second one is regarding the 1099 forms, and they will now accommodate filing box 7 amounts separate from other boxes. The box 7 is for NEC, or non-employee compensation. So you now have the option to either print all boxes, only box 7, or all boxes but box 7. So it's going to depend upon the requirement for the date that you're filing. It is recommended that the year-end updates be applied after you've closed the payroll module for the year. There is a year-end update, and there's also a separate tax table update that's released by Microsoft. The tax table updates for the new year should be applied after the payroll module has been closed for the current 2018 year. The year-end updates are going to include the information we previously discussed. These tax table updates, though, are going to provide changes to the tax tables that are used by your SL payroll deductions. There can be a few different releases of those tax table updates over the course of the year. So the most current tax table update that I last found on the Microsoft site was dated September of 2018. So once that's available, Microsoft will make that available to download as well. The year-end updates, those are typically released in the December timeframe. Those tax table updates, those are typically released late December or early January. So you can kind of keep an eye out for those. There are a few items to take into consideration as you're working on your year-end processing in SL. You are required to do calendar year processing in payroll and accounts payable, even if you're on a fiscal year setup. So all of it's done on a calendar year basis. You can post to prior periods as needed, even if they are closed periods. Now, please be aware, as an exception, just something to keep in mind, your setup must allow for such postings to closed periods and years. There are setup options surrounding this within the General Ledger module and the GL setup screen. And these options can restrict the user's ability to post to closed periods and or years. So you want to make sure that your setup allows for such if you do have entries that you need to post back to those closed periods or years. Additionally, there could be third-party add-ons installed on top of SL that impact the ability to post back to closed periods and years as well. So just keep that in mind. The W-2 and 1099 amounts are updated based on the check date. So the date that you issue that check and the date on that check is when the W-2s and 1099s are going to be impacted. Now, you may have noticed that the year-end updates that are provided by Microsoft are available for the SL 2015 and SL 2018 versions. If you still happen to be running on an SL 2011 version, Plumbline Consulting is offering a year-end package for the SL 2011 FP1, 2011 SP2, and 2011 SP3 versions at a billable solution. So this contains all of the same year-end updates that Microsoft released for the SL 2015 and 2018 versions, or will release. They've just been recreated and packaged for these SL 2011 versions. If you'd like some more information on the details surrounding the solution, you can reach out to us at dpv@sisn.com for more information. And the pricing for that is $1,000 for under 100 employees or / 1099s and $2,000 for over 100 employees / 1099s. So moving on then to the payroll module. The typical flow for the year-end processing in the payroll module is going to include closing the year for the payroll in the general ledger closing screen, reconciling the 941 and unemployment reports, printing your W-2s to plain paper to review the calculated amounts, editing the W-2 data as needed, printing the W-2s, and then generating an electronic file if you will be filing electronically. So let's go ahead and visit these items in a little bit more detail. First off, you want to confirm that all of the data for 2018 has been entered and processed. Then we would review the payroll batch register report to make sure that all of the batches have been released and posted. Reconcile your payroll accounts in the payroll module with the general ledger account balances. Some reports that are typically useful in doing that would be the account distribution report and your GL trial balance report. Then you would want to print any period end reports, such as your 941 quarterly tax worksheet, unemployment tax worksheet, or maybe your earnings and deductions report. At this point then, you're ready to do the year-end closing and payroll. This is done in the closing screen within the general ledger module. The December period of your fiscal year is always going to be closed with a closing type of year versus period for all the other months of your year. Closing then is going to cycle payroll into the new calendar year for you. It will also create deductions for the new year and history records then for the prior year. So this is what's going to allow you to calculate checks for your new calendar year. If this is not done and you try to calculate checks for the new 2019 year, you're going to get messages received stating that the deductions do not exist yet. You want to make sure that you clear all calculations in payroll before closing the year. This can cause errors in the new year too if they're left out there. And an important note that I want to reiterate is just make sure that you close payroll before you run that calculation for your new year. So here we have a screenshot of the closing screen itself. You can notice that for the payroll module, the closing type of year has been selected. So we have the options of do not close, period, and year. So under this setup, it's assuming that period 12 is my December period, and I would make closing type selection of year and click begin processing. Now in your setup, maybe period 6 represents the month of December for you. If that was the case, you would select year, begin processing. If you attempt to make an invalid selection, so either you select year as the closing type when it's not your December period, or you select period as the closing type when it is your December period, the system is gracious enough to pop up a warning message indicating that it's not a proper closing type selection and it does not allow you to proceed without making the proper selection. So there is a safeguard in place there. Here then we're going to cover a high-level overview for the W-2 steps for year-end processing, and we'll go into these in a little bit more detail next. So first we have the year-end updates get applied, then the W-2s would get calculated. The data on those W-2 forms should be reviewed to make sure that they contain accurate information. We want to make any edits or corrections as needed. The W-2 forms would get printed. And then last would be the creation of the electronic file if you're going to file electronically. Once the year-end updates have been applied, you're ready to move forward with doing W-2 calculations. You would open the W-2 calculation screen in the payroll module, choose the current W-2 year, select the pay groups that you wish to calculate the W-2s for. So that's in the upper right corner of our screenshot. When you select the appropriate pay groups that you wish to calculate for, the employees contained within those pay groups are going to populate in the employee grid at the bottom half of the screen. You have the option to select individual employees, select all of them, whatever you see fit, and then you would click Begin Processing. So after you click Begin Processing, it's going to populate the tables that are needed to print the W-2 forms and create the electronic file if you're filing electronically. Let's take a deeper look then at reviewing the data and the calculations behind those W-2s. Once the calculation has been completed, you can print the forms to review the data for each employee. You can print those to file, and maybe you choose to open it in Word, or you could just print it to plain paper to review that before you actually print that on your W-2 forms and use those up. You can also print using the plain paper copy format. This format will print the boxes for you. You can also use the W-2 employee history screen in the payroll module to review the data that was calculated for each individual employee. So you're able to go in there and bring the employee up, select the desired year that you want to review the information for, and then you can review all the information that would populate on the form here. Now, if you do determine that corrections need to be made to the W-2s, we'll first want to try to determine what is causing them to be incorrect. There's several potential causes to that. If you see that federal wages appear to be incorrect, it's suggested that we review the following items. We would want to identify earnings types that maybe are set up incorrectly, identify any missing exemptions that should exist, and if any such items are found, we would want to correct the setup and then rerun the W-2 calculation process and review the amounts again. Now, if state wages are what's appearing incorrect, we would want to review the earnings types and see if there's anything that's maybe set up incorrectly there, identify any missing exemptions that might need to exist, and if any such items are found here, the options for resolving are going to include, one, using Initialize mode to correct your year-to-date subject wages. That's done in the employee history screen, so you would correct those, and then you would rerun the W-2 calculation process. Other option would be to use Initialize mode to correct the state wages. That would be done in the employee W-2 history screen. If you go that route, you want to make sure that you do not recalculate the W-2s. Now, if a tax amount is found to be incorrect, we need to review a few different things here. First, determine the cause of the problem. Is the issue with the federal, state, or local taxes? Make sure that your federal deductions are properly coded as a type of federal. So that's in the deduction maintenance screen. There's a field for type. That should be set to federal. Any of your state deductions, those should be coded as type equals state. And you must also have the appropriate two-letter state code included there as well. That's, again, in deduction maintenance screen. And then last, if you have any local taxes, those should be coded as type equal local. They also need to have the appropriate two-letter state code entered in them. That's also in deduction maintenance again. Now, for tax amounts that were not properly taken, you can initialize the tax amounts to be correct. Some important notes: it is key to correct the setup issues to avoid problems in the following year. And you want to be careful when using Initialize mode to modify anything in Dynamics SL, for happen to be modifying employee history, whatever the case may be. Just be very cautious in doing so. You want to make sure you have backups of the databases before we do that. If you have any bit of doubt, you may want to contact your partner or Microsoft support directly to determine if that's the best approach in resolving it. Now, here are some items to make note of with the W-2 calculations. The W-2 calculation process can be run at any time before or after the year-end close has been completed, as long as history is being retained for those years that you wish to calculate for. It is recommended that you actually go ahead and start calculating those W-2s before the year is over, so you can get a test for those numbers, how things are shaping out to be. W-2s can be recalculated after the last check of the year has been ran then. If you have inactive employees who have earnings and deductions for the W-2 year, they can be calculated and printed as well. If an earnings type or a deduction amount is to be printed in a specific box number on the W-2s, you would use the W-2 control tab of the earnings type maintenance screen or the deduction maintenance screen. And you would indicate the box number or letter, and just remember, if the calendar year has been closed, so we're wanting to make the change for, let's say, 2018. If you've already closed the year in payroll module for 2018, you want to make sure that you use the deduction history screen versus the deduction maintenance screen to access and modify that record. That way it's impacting the 2018 record and going to impact your W-2s ultimately. So if you've already closed the year and you're wanting it to impact 2018, you want to use deduction history screen. If you have not yet closed the year, then you're safe in using just deduction maintenance screen, and that would impact the 2018 W-2s. If the employee W-2 history screen is used to modify W-2 information using Initialize mode, and the W-2 calculation process is reran after that, then all of the previous changes will be overwritten. If you would like those changes to remain intact, you want to be sure to click on the option on the screen. It's titled Protect Edited W-2 Information. You would check that option before you rerun the calculation process. So any of those items that you've initialized would remain intact as long as that option is checked off. If you happen to be missing a state employer ID, you would want to check the deduction maintenance screen on the W-2 control tab. If you happen to be missing a federal employer ID, you would go to the company maintenance screen in SL. The W-2 forms report within the payroll module is what's used to print these actual W-2 forms. SL does not have the copy 1 and 2 report formats, but you can use the copy D instead. SL uses a standard 2-part form. It also offers a 4-part or 4-up format as well, beginning with the SL 2011 version. You can obtain pre-printed forms from a company called Deluxe. They've been providing these forms for years. They line up quite nicely with the SL W-2 forms. May need to tweak it slightly, but those have been used by a lot of customers in the past. You can print your own forms using the copy A, B, C, and D formats. These formats are referred to as the plain paper copies. They will print with the boxes as well as the numbers for you. Copy A is considered the federal copy, and that must be in the scannable red ink. Copies B, C, and D are not required to be in this red ink, though. Now, creating the electronic file. You would use the Generate W-2 electronic file screen to create the file that you can provide to the IRS with your W-2 information when you're filing electronically. You would want to populate some required fields on screen, including the calendar year, the path to the file that's going to be created, and you can change that path that defaults in, I think, maybe to your SL directory. You could change that path to, put it somewhere more easily accessible, but just make sure that you're noting where that file is being created so you can reference it later. On screen, there's also a transmitter PIN number that's provided by the SSA. You plug that in. You want to include contact information as well. So if there's questions on what you're submitting, they have someone to reach out to. The company identification fields on screen will default from your company maintenance screen in SL. These fields can be overridden here as needed on the screen, but ultimately they're defaulting in from company maintenance. So if you see something that's glaringly obviously wrong, you would want to go into company maintenance and make the correction there. It'll default incorrectly then moving forward. Once you hit begin processing on the window to create the electronic file, it's going to create a file called irstax.001. This is the file that would be provided to the IRS. You can open this in Notepad if you needed to review it for any reason, but you would follow instructions provided by SSA for W-2 transmittal then. The file format that is produced by SL is usable by a program called AccuWage. This is a free software provided by SSA to check the file for formatting accuracy. It essentially just makes sure everything is valid and proves helpful in outlining any issues that may exist in the format so that you can correct it before you submit it to the IRS. And I've included the website where you can identify that program. Moving on then to Project Controller. The steps for year-end processing in Project Controller include making sure all data has been entered for the current period and that all other modules have been closed for the current period in the GL closing screen. It's too easy to make a mistake when you're allocating, you're doing your billing, approving time, running your labor postings. Say for example, you have time cards that have not been approved but will post to the new period regardless of what period they have in week maintenance. So in order to help with those sorts of things, it's recommended that you make sure the following items have been reviewed and processed as needed before we proceed with closing in Project Controller. So you'd want to review your time cards, complete the following processes: your labor commitment load, the GL labor posting, pay labor interface. You Continuing on, review the expense reports, run the FTT, complete revenue recognition or allocation processor, execute the billing transactions load, complete any invoicing, and then you can close the period at that point. Now, the project controller must be closed at the end of each fiscal period. Closing can be ran for the fiscal period or for year-end. The closing is performed in the close period screen within the project controller module specifically. So this is a bit different than the other modules in SL, which use the GL closing screen. Project controller has its own screen, closed period. This screen performs a set of control tests. It checks that all submodules have posted to the project, that the accounting modules are closed to any additional entries, that all project charge batches are posted, and if any exception is identified, the closing will be blocked. Time cards are also reviewed and a warning message appears containing the number of unposted items being carried forward. Sometimes the closing screen will present warnings, and if they're noted as a warning, these items will not prevent you from closing the period or year, but if it's an error, these items will prevent you from proceeding with the close. If the close period screen detects that the current period is also the last period of the fiscal year, the title of the begin processing changes to begin year-end close, and it will then close the year for you. So there's not a separate option like we have in the GL closing screen where you choose period or year. This just detects it based on what period you're in. If the year-end close takes place, balance forward amounts are calculated for those projects that have their balance forward switch on, and then summary records are written for the new year. So here, the close period screen, as I mentioned, it's going to detect if it's a year or a period. At the bottom, well, current period right now shows 11 of 1998. Next period would be 12. So the button is titled Begin Processing. Now I'm going to change it. Now the current period is 12 of 1998. Next period is 1 of 1999. You notice that the button at the bottom changes to begin year-end close. So no specific selection that you need to make. The system is going to detect that based on your current period and what type of closing needs to take place. Prior to processing the closing, it's important to review the project maintenance records for open projects. Any open project should have their balance carry forward, should have the balance forward at year-end option selected. So balance forward at year-end determines whether the year-end total of a project's budget and actuals are rolled forward as the beginning balance for the coming year during that year-end closing process. Projects that are going to span multiple fiscal years should have this checkbox selected so that the ending balance is rolled forward then to the next year for you. For annual projects, or those that are budgeted each year without regard to previous years, this checkbox should be clear, so the beginning balance is set to 0 then for the next year. If the year is closed and some projects were not marked as balance forward, the balances can be corrected by changing the current period in the project controller setup screen back to the last period of the previous year. You would then mark the balance forward option in project maintenance for that project and then run the closing process again. So project controller closing is a little forgiving in that sense that you can go back and redo that. Also in project controller, you want to review the fiscal period maintenance to set up the fiscal periods for the new year. And in time and expense, review the week maintenance to set up the week ending dates for your new year. Make sure you have those created. Now we'll move on to accounts payable and look at some of the 1099 processing here. Here we have an overview of the steps for year-end processing and accounts payable. You want to review the open AP files, print the AP batch register report, and review the status of batches looking for any that may need processed. We would post transactions in the GL post transactions screen. You can print the vendor period trial balance and period sensitive aged AP reports. You could tie these reports then to the GL trial balance report to reconcile AP to general ledger. Confirm that your recurring entries have all been generated, released, and posted to the general ledger. You can print the check register report and the aged AP reports, both out of AP. close the year then in the GL closing screen. And then at that point, close the 1099 calendar year to roll the 2 open 1099 years forward 1 year. The 1099 calendar year control screen is what's used to maintain the 2 open 1099 years that SL allows you to have at any given time. 1099 amounts can be manually updated using Initialize mode in the AP vendor maintenance screen on the 1099 info tab if you do find that the 1099 amounts are incorrect. Now, your user does have to have access rights granted to use Initialize mode in the designated screen. So whether you're trying to do that in Payroll module or here in Accounts Payable, your SL user ID must be granted Initialize mode access to the screen you're attempting to do this in. So sometimes the users aren't necessarily granted that. It may be necessary to get an administrator to log into SL for you. The 1099 amounts are calculated based on the check date paying the 1099 coded voucher. So if we have a voucher from December, but the voucher isn't paid until January, then the 1099 amounts are going to be updated based in January when the check was issued for it. The AP integrity check screen has an option to rebuild 1099 amounts. This only works when the vendors were properly coded as 1099 vendors and they had vouchers properly coded with 1099 box numbers. Such setup changes are not retroactive. Also, the 1099 preview report. This report is going to show all vendors that are marked as 1099 vendors regardless of what amounts have been paid to them. Okay, so you're getting all vendors on the preview. The 1099 forms report, however, is a little bit different. This is only going to print forms for those vendors that hit the limit and require a form be printed for them. Okay, so if you print the 2 and they're not matching, you're getting all vendors on the preview versus only those that have hit the limit on the forms report. 1099 amounts are updated throughout the year. So as you have vouchers that are coded with the 1099 box number and those get paid, then those amounts are going to accumulate in your 1099 box numbers and vendor maintenance for you. The vendors must be flagged as a 1099 vendor. They have to have the voucher with the 1099 box number on it. And then when it's paid, the check date, again, is going to determine the 1099 year to update. There's no extra processes required to print. We don't have to run any calculations or anything like that. And you only need to run a process if you will be generating an electronic file for sending to the IRS. Printing these forms in Accounts Payable, we go to Reports, click the 1099 Forms report. You can preview using that preview report that we mentioned, and you can then print the actual forms, which would be the 1099 Forms report. You can print as many times as needed. So if you happen to print and something's not lined up, whatever the case may be, you can reprint that as many times as you need to. And just a note there again about the preview, shows all 1099 vendors regardless of the limit. Forms will print only for those vendors that have gone over the limit. 2 1099 years are open in SL at any given time. Typically the prior year is left open and then the current year is open as well. So for example, what we would typically have now, you would see 2017 open as well as 2018. Not always the case, but that's typically what we see. Then as we roll into 2019 fiscal year, we would roll the 1099 years. So you would then have 2018 and 2019 as the 2 open years. Printing the 1099s for 2018 would then be considered the default, and I'll show you more on what I mean by that here. So this here is the 1099 Forms report. There is an option tab that has this checkbox, next 1099 year. In our example, let's assume we have the 2 open years as 2017 and 2018. The oldest year is always considered the current year, and then the most current year is considered the next year. So if 2017 and 2018 are 2 open years, we would need to come in here and check this checkbox if we wanted to print 1099 forms for 2018. Now, if 2018 and 2019 are 2 open years, you would not select this. Selecting this would result in trying to print forms for 2019. Okay, so it just depends on what 2 open years you have and whether or not you need to check that box when you print your forms. I'll show you here on the control screen. I'll touch on it in just a minute here. So this window here is the 1099 calendar year control screen. This is what's used to purge your oldest 1099 year and then roll them forward 1 year. This must be done to be able to print checks for the new year. So if your year is not one of the 2 open years in here, you will not be able to print a check for that year. You would change the option to purge oldest year, as we see on the screenshot, and then click Begin Processing. This is going to get rid of the oldest year information, and it cycles the vendors to the next year, leaving the new year open. So in our example, information from 2017 would go away, 2018 will remain, and 2019 will be open for new information then. This window, if you're printing your forms report and you're not sure whether or not you need to check that box, you can look here. This shows you what your current 1099 year is and what your next 1099 year is. If the next year is the one you need to print the forms for, then you need to check that box on the previous window that we were on for 1099 forms. So when in doubt, just look at this window. It'll show you which is current and which is next. But again, if you are getting to the point that you're ready to start printing checks in accounts payable for 2019, you will need to purge the oldest year here so that 2019 is one of your 2 open years, or you will not be able to print those checks. If it is determined that the 1099 information is not accurate, so maybe you had a voucher that wasn't coded with a 1099 box, maybe a vendor wasn't flagged as a 1099 vendor, those changes will impact the system going forward, but it's not retroactive. So we are able to edit these amounts on a vendor-by-vendor basis using the vendor maintenance screen while in Initialize mode. As I mentioned, your user is going to need access rights to Initialize mode in this screen specifically in order to do that. The Generate 1099 electronic file screen is what's used to create the file containing the 1099 amounts to be submitted electronically to the IRS. You can generate for either of your 2 open 1099 years. Some fields required are the vendor PIN number and contact information. If there's any questions on the file submitted, they will use that contact information to reach out to you. The control code comes from the IRS. Most of the information here populates from the company maintenance screen in SL, but it can be changed before generating the file. So just double check the information, make sure it's accurate. Here is the 1099 selection tab, and you would select which year, which of your 2 open years. You would select a file location, which vendors you want to include, and then we would use the transmitter tab here to populate required information. So this is the stuff that's pulling in from the company maintenance screen. So just review that, make sure it looks accurate. Just some notes for 1099 processing issues, general payroll items. If you happen to see a system message 532, this is typically received when you're trying to print checks if that check date is not yet an open 1099 year. So if we're trying to print a check and it's dated 2019 and 2019 is not an open 1099 year, go into your 1099 calendar year control screen and purge that oldest year. If you find that 1099 balances are incorrect for a vendor, you can use Initialize mode to correct them in vendor maintenance screen. There's also an integrity check option as well, depending upon whether the setup was accurate over the course of the year. The integrity check may be an option for you too. The current 1099 year was purged too many times or too early by mistake. If this is the case, you can contact your partner or support for assistance with SQL updates to reset the years and rebuild the 1099 amounts for those years. So it does require some behind the scenes work to get that fixed up for you, but we are able to do that. That concludes the information I had to cover with you. We can go ahead and open it up for question and answers at this time. Again, feel free to use the questions pane on your meeting console window to submit those questions.
So just for everybody out there, yes, we are going to make the slides available. Eric from SIS will send them out to everybody after this webinar. So you will get these slides, and the recording will be made available as well if you would like to have listen to this again. Any other questions? Are there any updates before we process the ACA forms? Well, ACA forms being through SL, I don't think SL does any ACA processing. Do you guys, Melanie?
No, that would be probably an add-on of some sort.
Right. If you're talking about Plumbline's integrity data, SL ACA connector, there are, I do not know if the final 2018 processing has been applied to the site yet, but we can check into that. If you are meaning anything else, please let us know, because I'm not sure what forms you're looking for. Could you explain again how to get the initialize mode? You mentioned you have to be in it to do some of the tasks.
Absolutely. So initialize mode depends on your version of SL that you're using specifically, but in the most recent versions, in the top left corner of your main SL menu, you will see a sale icon. It's the three little sale SL icon. Next to that is a drop-down arrow. If you click on the drop-down arrow, you will see initialize mode as an option on that menu. You would just simply click on initialize mode to select that mode, and that puts you into initialize mode. You would then access the given screen that you're looking to make the edits in, and those fields that are typically disabled would be enabled for you at that time so that you can edit those. So it's very, very important that you use caution when you're working in initialize mode, and make sure you exit initialize mode when you're done. To exit initialize mode, you can either log out of SL, log back in, or go back to the sale icon, click on initialize mode again, and it will remove the check marks next to it, indicating that you're now out of initialize mode. If you go into any of those screens while you're in initialize mode and the fields that are typically disabled are not enabled, that indicates that your user does not have access to initialize mode. So you need to either follow up with someone to give you such access or log in as another user that does have access.
Okay. Any other questions? If you do have any other questions, you can continue to put them in the question pane. We are going to give you a little glimpse at just some quick products that we want to make sure you know about from Plumbline Consulting. Keep in mind, we are running a flash holiday sale on our Plumbline Consulting products. That is 15% off any products purchased by the end of December. So you attending this webinar, you would get 15% off any products you would like to purchase by the end of December, just so that you know while looking at these. So we're just going to run through some of the most popular products that you might not know about. Going into year end, we do have an FY update product, and what this allows you to do is change your fiscal year. You're not able, it makes it a lot easier to change if you are on a calendar year and you would like to change that, or you would like to change to a calendar year. You can use our FY update product to do so. So if this is something you're thinking of doing at year end, this is a great product for you to take a look at. The next product we will show you is our 1099 Vendor Accelerator. Now this a lot of times comes in handy this time of year when you're needing to take a look at your 1099 vendor statuses or your default 1099 box settings. You can view them and update them using this product. All the changes are recorded in an audit trail. So if you do a lot with 1099 vendors and you would like this product, or you would like it to be a little easier for you to change the status, you get to do it in a grid format. So this is a great product for people that are working with 1099 vendors. The next product is also people working with vendors, but in a different aspect. If you do a lot of one-time vendor transactions, you're either cutting a check and you have to set up a vendor just for that one-time use, and now you have a ton of vendors in your system that you'll never need again. We have a product called One-Time Vendor, allows you to set up that one-time vendor under what we call one time. You enter the information in this one-time vendor box that you see in front of you, you process it, and then instead of it creating its own vendor, you will all that information will track under the one-time vendor ID. This keeps you from having hundreds of one-time vendors in your system. You can also use another product that we have that's vendor change merge to merge all those one-time vendors into this single one-time vendor usage, so you can kind of clean up your system. So if you do a lot of one-time vendor transactions, this is definitely a product you want to take a look at. Next product that we're going to talk about is Vendor Multi-Remit. I was a little behind on that. Vendor Multi-Remit, if you are cutting checks to a single vendor that has multiple remittance addresses. As you know, in SL, you can only have one remittance address per vendor. You can, with Vendor Multi-Remit, have multiple remittance addresses for a single vendor. So if this is something that is, you're setting up tons of vendor IDs all for the same company, but just so you have multiple remittance addresses, this is a product that can clean the system up for you and keep all your vendor remittance addresses under that single vendor. Next product is our prepaids processor. If you are tracking your prepaids on a spreadsheet and then posting your transactions manually to the general ledger every month, this is for you. You can actually put your prepaids into SL. You can process all the journal transactions by clicking a button, and you can run reports on your prepaids. Prepaids by current balances, prepaids by current period, and just prepaids, as well as a prepaid forecaster. This product is, excuse me, very inexpensive and allows you to bring all your prepaids into SL, get rid of those spreadsheets. The next product we're going to talk about is Quick Find. Again, another product that I feel every SL user should have. This product is available for AP, AR, GL Project Controller. It's called our Quick Find Core 4 bundle, and you get to use this grid below and enter whatever information you know about what you're looking for in SL. Hit Find, and it loads a grid with with the results. So a lot of times, I can say in the AR Quick Find, I'm looking for this invoice number. I can plug the invoice number in, hit Find. It gives me everything on that invoice, as well as it allows me to drill down to the application to see what has been applied to that invoice. With AP, you can look for a vendor. You can say, I'm looking for something for this vendor over $500, or give me everything over $500, or I'm looking for something under the amount of $250, things like that. You put all the information in. There's the color legend at the bottom, allows you to apply those filters to the grid, and then all the information, again, is loaded in a grid format. Melanie, flip to the next slide, please. The grid format then gives you the ability to export all the information that you've loaded in that grid, and you can export it into an Excel pivot table or just a regular Excel format. Nice thing about this is it's not the not so pretty ones that come out of SL, they're actually pretty ones. So not only do you get to find the information and load it to the grid, drill down to the places like the specific voucher, specific check, things like that, but you can export all that information, put it into an Excel spreadsheet or a pivot table. So we have two packages, one that has the core 4, and then one that has all the other modules, inventory, lot, purchasing, things of that nature. So you can buy either 4 or all of the searches to help you find information in SL quicker. The next product we're going to go over is, just so that you are aware, Plumbline has partnered with FastPath to provide Audit Trail and Assure to the SL community. What does this mean? There is no audit trails in SL, and FastPath Audit Trail is a very robust system that's very easy to use and easy to get your information out of it. So you can track any changes made to any screens, any fields within the screen, anything on your SQL server. You can see who changed it, what they changed, and you can have these reports emailed to any person you want as many times in a weekday, however you want it to occur. So you not only get to see the changes, have them automatically emailed out, create your own audit trails, but it can all be done on, or this can be done on anything that's installed on your SQL Server, not just SL. So these are not, it's a great product. It coming into audit season, it can really help you deliver the information to the auditors that they're looking for without having to do a ton of work. We also have a product called Assure that allows you to review the security roles, who has what security roles, whose roles could be critically or critical to your company, define them, why do they have these rights, things of that nature. So if you want to take a look at security roles, that's Assure. If you want an audit trail and reporting for your audit trail, that is what these two products can do for you. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is, you can just flip that, that's the audit trail. Last thing we're going to talk about is if you are not using an Affordable Care Act product and need to file, and your insurance company isn't doing this for you, or your payroll company isn't doing this for you, we do have, for people using SL Payroll, we have an SL connector that allows you to pull your payroll information out of SL and put it into the Integrity Data's ACA solution to be able to provide you the ability to file your ACA forms for the year, as well as track, and there's also electronic filing services available. So that is our ACA. We do have an ACA solution. If you're still looking for one, please feel free to reach out. And then I think that is the last product we are talking about today. So Mark, would you like to talk about the SL Users Group Conference, or would you like me to? I don't hear Mark, so I'll just tell you a little bit.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll just tell you a little bit about the SL Users Group Conference. Plumbline is actually the premier sponsor for this event. It is a fabulous SL Users Group event where the SL community comes together. They help teach each other. There's tons of SL specific classes to take. You can meet with other people that are using SL and network and learn how to, do things a little easier, how other people are doing things, and what options you have out there for SL, as well as you can learn all the new things that are coming out in SL, ask the experts, and it's a great environment. We really stress to the SL community that if you don't go to any other conference in the entire year, you should go to this one. This year it's being held in Anaheim. I personally have already been to the hotel. It's a fabulous place, very close to Disneyland in Anaheim, and it is being held in April this year. So April 15th to the 18th, and as you can see on your screen, there is a discount code. If you use the SIS discount code, you can get $50 off your registration. So you should really take advantage of that early registration. Get in there, get your boss, or get into budget for 2019 to be able to attend the SL User Group Conference. And that's my SL User Group pitch. And then the next slide is just thank you guys for attending. So Mark, do you have anything else you want to say to the community before we end?
Outside from the fact that we are all very happy to see you on this in the webinar, we appreciate your time, and we hope that if there's any questions, concerns, or we can be of any assistance whatsoever, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.